Hey guys, this video talks about polynomial long division. So why do we use polynomial long division? Well, it'll prove a certain expression is a factor of that polynomial, and it will also provide solutions or zeros to our polynomial. So if I want you to solve something using this division will provide a solution. So much like regular division, polynomial division kind of follows the same rules. So let's look at these basic things that we've done since we were, 8 years old, maybe 7 years old. Let's take a look. So 3 divided by 430. Well, first of all, I take a look at my first two terms, my first numbers. And I know that 3 can go into 4 one time, so I'm going to start there. 1 times 3 is 3, and then I subtract. We're going to do the same thing for polynomial division, and you'll see what I mean on the next slide. So we're left with a 1, bring down the 3. 3 goes into 13 how many times? Well, it goes in 4 times. 4 times 3 is 12. Bring down the 0. And 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. We're left with the remainder of 1. So our answer is 143, remainder 1, or you could say 143 and a third, or you can say 143.333 repeating. Any of those things would work. Let's look at this next example real quick. So my 3 doesn't go into my 2, so I have to move on to the next term. How much does 3 go into 21? It goes in 7 times. We have 21 zeros after we subtract. We bring down a 0. This goes in 0 times. This is kind of an easy example. My point is I just wanted you to see the relationship between the first term and what we're looking at inside. Alright, so let's look at an example here. I have x squared plus 3x minus 12 divided by x minus 3. The first thing I want to go over with you are just some terminology. We may have forgotten what these things mean, but the first thing, my polynomial, or what's underneath your dividing sign, that is your dividend. And what you're dividing it by is your divisor. Your answer that you come up with up here, that is your quotient. Should you have a remainder, that would go up here as well. So just some terminology, and this kind of helps you to check your solution. Say you had your answer. Well, to check it, you would take your answer or your quotient, multiply it by your divisor, and add your remainder. And if you got what's underneath this dividing sign or your dividend, then you're good to go. So I'm going to erase this stuff, but just to go over those vocab terms. Okay, so we're dividing this polynomial by x minus 3. Just like before, I'm going to look at the first two terms. Okay, and x does go into x squared. How many times? X times. I'm going to take that number and then multiply it by both terms here and put it underneath what's under the dividing sign. So x times x is x squared. X times a negative 3 is a minus 3x. Okay, so just like before, we do subtract. So keep that in mind, and sometimes I like to offset things in parentheses when I know the signs will change. So we are going to subtract this because our goal is kind of to create these steps that our variables will kind of cancel out here. So we want to subtract, which means this now becomes a negative x squared, and the 3x is now positive. Okay, our x squareds cancel, and we have a 6x. And I'm also going to bring down that 12. Ask yourself, well, how do I get from an x to a 6x? Well, I multiply it by 6. Both things are positive, so it's a plus 6. Now let's multiply this 6 into both parts of our divisor. And we have 6 times x is 6x. 6 times a negative 3 is a negative 18. We're subtracting. So this now becomes a negative. And my negative 18 becomes positive. That'll cancel. And I'm left with a 6. That is our remainder. Okay, so x plus 6, remainder 6. You could also write it as, I prefer this way, but the book uses the capital R. I like to write it as 6 as a fraction, 6 over x minus 3. Either one works, whichever you prefer. And there's our solution. Again, to check your answer, you're going to take your quotient times your divisor and add 6 to get this. So real quick, let's do that. X plus 6 times x minus 3. If we FOIL, we get x squared minus 3x plus 6x and a negative 18. Now don't forget we have to add that 6. So we're left with x squared plus 3x minus 12. And we're good to go. Okay, so let's try another one. So let's take a look at our first terms. How do I get from x to x squared? Well, I multiply by x. I'm going to take that and multiply it to both parts of my divisor. X times x is x squared. X times a negative 4 is minus 4x. And we are subtracting, so we have some sign changes here. My x squareds cancel, and I'm left with a positive x. Bring down that 1. How do I get from x to x? Well, I multiply by 1. And I take that term, and I multiply it into both parts of my divisor. And we're subtracting, so we have some sign changes. My x's cancel, and I have a remainder of 5. Okay. Checking our answer, this does work. If you want to take a minute to do it for yourself, we're good to go. Alright, one more example, guys. Looks like I have a cubic function here, whereas the last two were quadratic. But that's okay. We're still doing the same process. So ask yourself, how do I get from x to x cubed? Well, I have to multiply it by x squared. And then I take that term and multiply it to both parts of our divisor. X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times a negative 4 is a negative 4x squared. Okay, look at what we ran into here. We don't have an x squared here. This doesn't line up. So what you must do is to make this in a correct format so we can continue. So this is going to be, we have to take into account that there are 0 x squared terms. So I'm going to rewrite this. 13x minus 12, I still need to add that. There are 0 x squared terms, so we would say plus 0 x squared. And then the other remaining parts, we had a negative minus 13x and a minus 12. Okay, so if you run into that, know that you need to do a little bit of rewriting, but no big deal. Okay, so x squared times x is our x cubed. X squared times a negative 4 is negative 4x squared. We are subtracting, so we have a sign change. And this now becomes plus. Our x cubes cancel. and we have a positive 4x squared. Bring down that negative 13x. And let's start this again. So how do I get from x to 4x squared? Well, I have to multiply by a 4x. Take our 4x, multiply it by both parts of our divisor, and we get a 4x squared, a 4x squared minus a 16x. We'll have a sign change. This now becomes positive. This is negative. And we're left with, well, our x squareds cancel. So we have a positive 3x. And bring down the negative 12. How do I get from x to 3x? I'm going to add 3. Three times both parts of our divisor. We have a 3x and a minus 12. We have a sign change because we are subtracting. And look at everything cancels out. So we have no remainder. Oops. Okay, no remainder. Alright, so our quotient or our solution, I should just say quotient to this, is x squared plus 4x plus 3. We will take it a step further when we solve our equations, but for now, I will leave it just like this. So thanks for watching.